Good evening. Welcome to the November 6th meeting, regular scheduled meeting of the East Bridgewater Planning Board. Tonight we have with us our regular members, Diane Phillips, Rachel Tedesco, Roy Gardner, myself, Kevin Riley, and we have our alternate associate member, Yvonne McCrae, as well. We have a number of items to get through tonight. We'll try to do that as efficiently as possible. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes for the prior meeting, October 17th. Assuming that folks have had the opportunity to review those and don't have any comments or questions, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes without formal reading in the form presented.
Move that we accept the minutes of October 17th.
Motion is made by Ms. Tedesco. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gardner. Further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the motion, approving the motion rather, to accept the minutes of October 17th as printed, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Unanimous vote of those members present. We have with us this evening the town administrator, who brought along I'll say a bevy, perhaps, of other individuals to talk to us with respect to the work that's being done on our new master plan. So, Mr. Seelig, feel free, bring anybody up that you wish, and
I don't know how long it's going to take. We have the presentation.
They sent in an email and they're gonna continue next.
yeah, we're
planning board meeting. Our 7:15 hearing is gonna
Okay.
continue.
Okay.
Yep.
But was you're able to get the presentation,
Oh, I don't know.
switch over?
No.
Roy, if I could borrow, log in his name because I can get to it.
Gonna borrow that? It should be in the folder, I believe, Charlie.
So just for, while Charlie's doing that, just for informational purposes, back in 2022, I believe, the town received a grant of $50,000 to assist in the development of a new master plan for our community, the last one having been done back in the 1990s. That is basically a comprehensive long-range plan that looks to guide future growth and development in the town. So, Charlie, if you'll introduce the folks that are with you and take it away.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
You want me to sit here?
Sure.
Sure.
You got a microphone if you sit there.
Even easier. So I'm Rhiannon. I'm a senior comprehensive planner with Old Colony Planning Council. I also have Lori, the manager of comprehensive planning, and my Lori Muncy, and also Matt and Jason, who are colleagues that have also been working on this project in terms of working on a lot of the initial data collection that went into this. So this presentation is just a quick overview of how the next year or so is going to look, getting this to the public and some of the work that we do on the back side of it as well.
So whenever you need me to go to the next page.
Next slide, please.
This actually work.
I think you just have to click the down arrow because it's not really a full presentation view. Yeah. Perfect. So this is just Mass General Law for a master plan. As noted, it's been a while since there's been an update. So just a reminder that I'm not going to read it. It's an abbreviated version, is that we're creating a document using community engagement and data that creates a comprehensive plan and helps project policies and standards for the town. So state requires certain elements to be part of it, and we sort the master plan into chapters based on these elements. So these include the overall statement of goals and policies, land use, housing, economic development, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, sustainability and climate change, not mandated, but we use it as a continuation of your MVP or hazard production plans, because they have to be included in your master plan. Services and facilities, transportation and circulation, which is the movement of product through a community, and how it'll be implemented once the plan is completed. Next slide, thank you. So how it works, working with Old Colony Planning Council, which is a regional planning agency that East Bridgewater falls under out of the 13 in the state. So our job as the facilitator is to listen to the community through doing meetings like this, and we'll have more where it's more like you guys talk to me versus me having to talk at you. And also doing that with community members, so we'll host separate meetings that are just in general for the community, where we'll present similar data and give them options to talk about their visions and hopes for the future. We'll gather, analyze, and present information just like today, and help make a plan that responds to the goals identified. As the town, you have some data that we can't access on our own, so we'll ask for that over time. We'll also ask that you help advertise public engagement opportunities, even if it's just introductions in the beginning of the planning board meeting. More people watch than you think or check notes, so it's always helpful. And providing feedback on materials such as the survey that'll come around and some of the meeting materials and chapters. Next. So overall, a master plan, it's a guide for local public policy. It can be used to help create, edit, or change previous bylaws. Can help the town reach its goal for land preservation, create targeted economic development, prioritize conservation, allocate funds for capital improvement, advocate for needed services, and capture the wants and needs of the community. And we do all that not only through talking at these meetings or with the public or surveying, but by going through lots and lots and lots of data and the listed categories on the screen. Everything from your existing zoning and bylaws to water resources, conservation, state and national guidelines for habitat, agriculture, local and state transportation plans, emergency statistics, land value, history, demographics, and economy. And the most important part that really makes it personal to the town and personal to your community is getting the community input. No two master plans look the same, and it's because it's so important to get that community perspective, so that way it's actually something people want to work towards over the next decade and further. So this is a really vague timeline because we'll piece together the dates as we go, but to give everybody an idea, we are wrapping up the demographic research. I'll show you guys a brief view of that quickly so you can see all the work we've been doing. And then we'll have a first public workshop where I'll kind of do this for the whole town, a little bit more detailed, more pictures. And then we'll have a second one where they can tell me every vision, thought, idea they've had since the last meeting. And then a third one where I'll show the completed product and they can give any final comments of things we might have missed along the way. And here's more data than you ever want to know about your community. So some things that we look at are the age breakdown, because it helps us see where needs fall in terms of medical access or school need or job levels, entry, medium, advanced. So the average median age for the town is 39.9, which is a little less than the county and about the same as the state. We can go to the next, and everybody will have a copy of this. I think they already do. So you guys can dissolve this at your own rate, because I know it's, like I said, more than you thought you wanted to know. So between 2000 and 2010, the town population increased by 820 residents, which is over 6%. And between 2010 through 2020 census, the town gained another 646 residents, a 4.5% increase. And that totals us today to 14,440, with a steady but upward trend.
Part of the work you'll be doing is also saying, okay, what are we going to we're going to look at 2030, we're going to look at 2040, and what are projections going to be?
Right, for sure. So, housing, there is 5,116 housing units and 4,949 households, with 2.9 people averaging per household. I assure you, though, there's no half a person living anywhere. And And the median value of owner-occupied housing units at this time is $395,000.
So is that for a single family, or is that, how is that worked out? Because I know for a single family, our assessors are, it's about 500,000 for a single family home now.
So that's looking at anything that's identified as owner-occupied only. So probably, if like, it will include a multifamily if the other person's living in it, but the statistics from here are pulled from the 2020 census, and we've seen how much that real estate market has shifted since like a year before that and continuing to. So I'm sure that we can look at other data to include in the master plan. Subsidized housing inventory is a state mandated percentage that each town needs to have 10% of its housing stock in subsidized units that meet the state standard. At this time, only 176 units are subsidized, which only brings you to 3.3%. So we can have longer conversations about that, about how you bring that number up and what the consequences the state can uphold if we aren't working to reach that number. Like I said, we'll have so many more fun meetings after this, but.
Just a quick question about
Yeah.
that. I think it's a little misleading to the general public in terms of the subsidized housing number, and that a lot of the general public thinks that things like 40B with subsidized housing and all those kind of things are, quote, affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And I think the important differentiation for everybody to understand is that subsidized housing inventory under the state rules has a very specific and detailed explanation.
Yes.
And they are actually subsidized by the state in one of several different forms.
Yes.
So just a affordable apartment, for example, regardless of how affordable it is, can't fit into that.
It does have to meet the state standards, for sure, and they are very specifically outlined,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the income, and like we said, with the inflation, we know that these numbers will keep adjusting, and we can look at any projections that come out over the next year. So these are your local economy, just a quick poll of businesses that pay taxes that are registered in the town. So there are, I want to say it was 6 businesses that have over 100 employees in the town, including the YMCA as the top employer for the town. And the average commute for the town in terms of people traveling outside the town for work is 33.3 minutes.
Are these 2020 census numbers?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So a quick look at the tax levy for the town. So it's always good to check and see where we're getting taxes income other than through residential's properties. So looking at the commercial and industrial, we can see that there's about 10% coming in from non-residential, which is actually pretty good for this, our little part of southeastern Mass. Transportation, so crash data is pulled from Mass Police and Mass DOT, their collaborative website on transportation, car accident data. So the majority of accidents have just been property damage only, which means that when the car accident happens, nobody's actually injured. It's more just damage to the car, side swipes, or most of the time it's really just mailboxes that are damaged, but there's been no fatal injuries since 2020 to date. Yeah.
Why is this information important as part of doing the master plan?
So we can do some comparison between other communities. Is it possible that there are more dangerous intersections in your community than others? And I think if we jump to the next slide, we can see kind of where they're clustered. So this is a zoomed out map. This map is actually interactive. If you guys are interested, I can send you the link. You can zoom in and see every single dot of where every accident happens, but we start to see the trends. You can see the darker blue shows you where you're hitting over 150 accidents in an area. So it also kind of gives you a clue to where congestion is, right? Because that's where the most accidents are going to happen. Most accidents happen at 4-way intersections with 90-degree angles. So we can start to look at those things and see if there's a better way to construct road or traffic flow.
As we well know with the 383 or whatever that number is, if it's more than 4 roads coming in, meaning Central right over here.
When everything meets at
Yes,
once.
Right, yes.
I'm from Worcester. We have a very famous square
Kelly
called Kelly Square.
Square,
So
They made improvements there. They put in that roundabout.
it's very confusing if you're used to the chaotic version, though. So on the next slide, we can take a look at, just these are maps that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. This is a zoning map and then a land use map. And one thing that is always interesting to look at is the comparison of what land is zoned as and where we see it being used. And obviously everything that's very green is conservation space and also everybody's backyards. And then you can kind of see exactly where your commercial corridor is and how you can see the color change that reflects exactly on the other map.
I think one of the questions that would come up is, we have a zoning map, we have a land use map, if the two aren't matching, what issues are raised by that in the sense of, are we zoning where we want to be zoning? Are we using the land in those zones the way we would hope to be using it?
Mm-hmm. And how can you maximize your commercial spaces? So these statistics are pulled from the Losing Ground 2020 report from Mass Audubon. They go through and do town-by-town analysis. These numbers, if you know every conservation project that happens, and I know a lot of people do, these numbers might look outdated. Their 2020 report looks at 5 years of data at a time. So they close their data pull at 2017 and take a lot of time analyzing that. So most towns out here have been doing a ton of work on permanent conservation work. So you might notice that the numbers look a little bit lower, but in terms of permanently conserved land as of 2017, you have 827 acres. And that was the overall 7% of all land. So permanently conserved versus temporary, so that means all your chapter land isn't included, because a chapter parcel could come out. So even if there is way more conserved land than that, it won't fall under that category, it falls elsewhere.
If I can just interrupt for 1 second, we did have a public hearing scheduled at 7:15 this evening for Blackbrook Estates. The applicant has requested a further continuance of that matter to our next meeting of November 20th, 2023. Chair would entertain a motion to so continue.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gardner, second.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Phillips. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That matter stands continued to November 20th at 7:15 PM. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries, thank you. So our next steps from here are to get a survey published out to the community and creating a website page that'll be hosted by Old Colony Planning Council. And then we can work with the town to create a link so that way, even if people are searching from the town, they can get to the page. And we will publish the survey there as well as provide paper copies for accessibility purposes. And we'll get to work on scheduling the first public workshop. So we'll have a run through for the community of everything I just explained about the how and the why. And then we'll give them all the data to look through and think about and have more, we'll have large printed maps out so they can really see, you can really get that zoning versus land use next to each other and look at it. Sometimes people want to talk about rezoning or if they have ideas for parcels where they think something's been forgotten about or projects. So it'll be a run through on our part of introducing ourselves like we're doing today with the community and then also trying to get them excited to be engaged as much as possible.
And you also had sent out the community profile, I think, I have to send up, make sure that the planning board and the department heads have the updated version. You had sent a draft and we looked at a little bit of the data and resend that out. Same thing with the survey. The survey I'm also sending around, not so much to get answers, but toward as a series of beta testing, just to looking for typos or whatever else, or
Clarity. If you're the one that writes the question, it makes sense, and then if you're the one that read it, it doesn't, so it's always
We'll
important.
get that out to the planning board also in terms of before publishing the survey, we want to go through it and try and make it as easy as possible for residents and other interested parties to participate.
What, assuming, town of Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, as you said, has 4,900 odd households, what would be the target response in terms of surveys and participation in all of this? And how are those surveys distributed? Are they, is it a mailing to every household?
I'll answer the second half first. So we usually don't do a mailing. If there's a town newsletter that's going out, we can post information through that. Can be a QR code in the website written out and where to get paper copies. We try to really push forward using the digital version because the collection of paper surveys and then having to input it and cross-compare it on SurveyMonkey is a big budget absorber. So it ends up taking away from the writing time, which we try to limit, but we do want to make sure that people who don't have access to computers or seniors who just aren't comfortable, any member that's not comfortable using technology is able to. So usually what I'll do is I'll reach out to the public library and the COA as a start and make sure they have access to paper copies and information on the digital survey, so that way they can execute it in their areas, in their, what's the word I'm looking for? Communication platforms and with their members. And we'll post it on the website and your town website. And we can do a bunch of flyers. And the sky's the limit on how many ways we advertise it.
Yeah, and we've done the same sort of outreach when we did the Route 18 survey, for instance. I think from East Bridgewater, we got about 250 responses. It wasn't just residents, because we were including, again, just like with this survey, we were including people who work here as an example. But, it's far more than than the number of people, for instance, we had a town meeting. So 250 isn't too bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say the dream is a couple hundred, like 200 to 300 is usually where we're hoping for. I'm not saying that always happens, but that's always what I'm striving for. And then I always say public meetings are hit or miss. So sometimes it's way more people than you thought, and sometimes it's just like a small circle, 15, 20 people who you often see at your other town meetings who are really engaged. I think it's super important for any department head who's able to come to be there. You can't advocate for what you do if you're not there. I can advocate on behalf of you, but the community never sees it as strong unless you're there. So whenever there's an opportunity for any of you to be there, it's super helpful in terms of getting, the work that you guys do shared and that knowledge and that relationship, and also showing the town that it matters as much to you as we want it to matter to them. But yeah, I would say I would like to see 30 to 50 people at a public meeting. I think that would be a really good number for.
That would be a lot.
That'd be a lot, though.
For us.
So.
But yeah, it'd be
We'll see.
lovely to do, yeah.
I try to start optimistic, and then we'll take it from the first meeting, and I'll lower my expectations.
Okay, and we, one more page?
I think it's just my contacting it.
I'm just curious about the workshops, because we had read about them. What are some of the topics you'd be discussing?
So we kind of use the chapters as an outline. We'll kind of cluster them together, like conservation and open space and recreation. We separate them because of how the state expects it to be outlined, but we know that those conversations go hand in hand, so we might cluster those. We'll do some printed maps of, like, for transportation is always an easier one for printed maps. Is there, most people can circle an intersection on their drive to work that stresses them out, or where they wish there was a sidewalk or crosswalk. So letting people physically write on maps is a great activity we use. Sometimes it's just having discussions about, like, these are the most popular used parks, where are there improvements that are needed. But for that first meeting, it'll mostly be allowing everybody to absorb all the information that we're looking at, kind of like we're doing today, because it's so much and you don't realize how much data you can pull out of just a single community and how important it is in your planning initiatives. So that'll be the main goal, and then we'll talk a little bit about visioning, like, are there areas where you want to see zero change, no change, don't touch it? Are there areas where you think we're not meeting our goal in terms of, like, maybe there is a way to add more businesses in the commercial district, or just things like that nature? So just allowing people to, like, have those broader discussions for that first meeting. And then the second one, I'll kind of use that as an outline for where were people most interested and trying to make smaller discussions out of that.
Okay, thank you.
And people can also, will have access to our contact information, and there's something they feel strongly about and want to have their public comment, that's always available too.
Other questions from the board?
I just a couple of quick comments.
Sure.
So one of the things I've noticed over the last few weeks, especially in the few hours that I got copies of this information just afternoon time today. So I did run through it very quickly. And I did some quick reviews. I do note that I was one of the, let's say, principal architects of the, I think it's now 36-year-old master plan that we have.
I'm glad you're still dedicated to
And
the
that,
cause.
that virtually everything now is retrievable electronically. Back then, nothing was retrievable electronically. Everything you had to find somewhere in paper.
A lot
So
of time flipping through books.
Took a few rides to Boston and a few rides to a few other places to get the information we had in the master plan then. But one of the things I did note is the state has, I don't want to call it rigid, but a fairly defined architecture they want to see the master plan in. Which I think in the long run can be a good thing, but it's a very different architecture than our 35-year-old master plan was in. So I'm interested to see how we handle some of the things that was, when we did ours, it was, again, advised by Old Colony Planning Council. In fact, Old Colony Planning Council did a lot of the footwork for us.
I think the most useful part of the master plan and how it's laid out is not maybe necessarily the breakdown of the chapters, but the action plan that we'll put together at the end. And that will really break down what chapters the information fell under, but what were the main goals that you pulled from all of this information and all of your ideas. And we'll try to pair that with who should be responsible for it in general, like where does that fall under in terms of how does that get passed or moved on, and also ways that we can source funding for that. So part of what Old Colony Planning Council does is grant administration and technical assistance for grant writing and execution. So we have a pretty good list of known grants through the state that municipalities can reach. Either themselves, if you have the capacity to do, or projects we can pick up after the master plan to move you through that process. So it's about really taking that big book, and then that last chapter kind of really shows you how to execute it, and it'll look a lot more like what I've noticed master plans used to look like.
So I see 4 key areas. I mean, there's a whole lot of key areas, but I see
But you
four,
can chunk them.
4 priority key areas. And 3 of those have to do with regional things. Regional use of water, regional use of sewage, which we're actually working on right now, or municipal wastewater, for a more palatable term, I guess. And regional transportation, specifically increase of the use of bat transportation in the town,
Right.
because we're deep into coming up with some MBTA community stuff, which is actually going to be happening parallel with this. Maybe it can work together to some extent.
Absolutely.
And one of the keys to that, I think, is that it would be really nice if we had, in my understanding of the MBTA Communities Act, especially if you try to read the now thousands of pages of stuff on the state websites,
Not stressful.
is that they're striving for the adjacent communities that don't have actual stations within them to try and work together to try and get more regional transportation,
Right.
which just simply based on that definition, if you look at all the things, means bus transportation. So I think all of those things, and the last one of those is we obviously need some major help in multifamily housing. I think there's lots of different ways to do that. I mean, some is pure multifamily housing, i.e. apartment buildings, condominium buildings, and things like that, but I think one of the things we would like to see is kind of a gathered view from multiple other towns of how they handle the second unit in an existing residential home. Because that's one of the #1 areas that I see changing in multiple towns throughout southeastern Massachusetts.
I agree, yeah. I think I'm not prepared, and I don't think anybody wants to have that discussion at 7:30 right now. Because
Right
it can
now.
get, just because it can get really detailed. But
just-
I think it'd be great to sit down with the planning board again in a few months after we've had that first meeting and talk about the bylaws in town that apply to that, because that's where a lot of it falls under, right? It gets
Yes.
thrown back to the planning board and the ZBA over and over again about those accessory dwellings, or is it a second unit?
Yep.
And we can take time to go through all that stuff, and trust me, we are doing our best to keep up with the ever-flowing MBTA rezoning documents, so we're
There
in
seems
the
to be
fight
a
with
new one
you.
up there every week or so, so.
I think I have a webinar again tomorrow.
Okay, I think that's all I had, thanks.
So in terms of scheduling for this, the initial public meeting, in terms of timing, what do you think of? Are we looking at December, January? Where are we, given that we're?
Most of the materials are already together, so if you think December is enough time without crunching into holiday travel, we could do it. If we think it's better to just skip right to a little bit after the new year because of all the holiday travel, I think that's more than within reason too. And then we'll just do that follow-up meeting a little bit closer, like end of February maybe, so it's not, I think it's even better sometimes that way because you don't want to lose people and have them forget about all that good
Yeah.
stuff they were thinking about and then make them like, oh, what were we talking about? You know, just try to keep that continuousness. But I do like to try to get the survey out first and use that through resources to be like, hey, look at the survey. And then the last question of your survey will be, hey, give us your email so we can tell you the public meeting's happening. And then at the public meeting, remind them if they got there from an alternate source to go take the survey. So have them kind of play off of each other. So I think that first step is getting the survey and the website together. And then, like I said, the materials are already, with the exception of a few maps, are ready. So, and not, I did that first and then made your presentation. So they won't look very different, so.
So maybe the Wednesday or Thursday after New Year's as an example.
Yes, that'd be a great time.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, that first week.
I'm excited to get this moving and get to the fun, more fun part of this.
Other comments or questions from the board?
No, very,
Charlie,
Very
anything further
helpful.
to add on
At this
on the
point,
topic?
I'll try and make sure I get all the documents to all of you within the next day or so.
Thank you.
And you'll all have my email, so please feel free to ask questions or send thoughts. And it was really great getting to meet you guys and getting to see you in person. So thank you. for the
Thank you,
opportunity.
Brianna. We appreciate your information. Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to the team who helped collect all the data sitting behind me.
yeah. Yeah, December did the survey. Yeah.
Do you
Wow,
want
that-
me
I
to
would-
stay? I'm welcome. Do you want me to stay for anything else?
You are more than free
you
to
guys.
stay if you wish, but,
I think we're probably set for now, but
Okay.
I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit, so.
yeah.
Sounds good.
No, thank you so much. Okay, so I think that we may just bop around the agenda just a little bit. I know Mr. Burke is here, and I know how much he enjoys attending our meetings. However, in the effort to perhaps move him along to better pursuits, we'll have him come up to discuss a little bit more the Thatcher Street overlay district that he introduced to us some months back.
Okay.
Last meeting, I asked you guys to be sure to take a look at the correspondence that we had received from Mr. Burke, which basically was a mapping and of the proposed overlay area, and then a proposed overlay district bylaw. So I had made some comments, things that concerned me. I've shared those with Mr. Burke this evening. I open it up to, well, Mr. Burke, let me say, if you have anything to start with, and then we'll perhaps jump into comments and questions from the board. How about that? You're on.
I can first thank you very much for your consideration. As I outlined in the letter, I think this is a good utilization of the property. I think it will give controls to the town, and it'll give some definitiveness to the landowner in terms of as of right. So everyone knows what the proper use of the property is going to be and how it's going to be. I took a look at the chairperson's comments, and there's nothing there that causes me a concern. They seem to be realistic. I know there will be probably one residential property involved. And.
I thought there were two, but okay.
A reasonable buffer, whatever it is something you'd anticipate. So I don't have any concerns. I think they're thoughtful, and we could certainly live with them. And if there are other questions that any of the members of the planning board would have, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Roy, comments?
The only comments that I had were I'm not sure that the map doesn't need a little bit of tweaking to potentially include a little bit more area than was in there.
I
But-
mean, that, we're happy to assist. We don't own the extra land, but I can do the engineering for you
Understood?
and get it done, if that's appropriate.
My thought would be to include all of the current uses that are Class 2 licenses right now. And as I read the map and tried to match it up with the zoning map, I don't think it includes all of the areas that hold Class 2 licenses on
On
Thatcher
Thatcher
Street.
Street or in areas beyond Thatcher Street?
Just Thatcher Street.
I see.
In terms of the text, I had seen some of Kevin's comments on the text. I tend to agree with those, and I think with some very minor tweaks, I think it's pretty much ready to have a public hearing and go to annual town meeting, which would be our goal.
Excellent, yeah. We're happy to assist in any way we can.
So my request, if those changes are agreeable to you, if you would just work those into a revised draft, a red line copy, and then a clean copy, so that we can then take that up either at the next meeting or the first meeting in December, get that, to the point where we are able to have it ready for the annual town
And
meeting.
we'll get it out this week.
Ladies, any comments from your side of the table? No?
Trust,
All good, okay.
Thank the planning board for its time.
Thank you, Attorney Burke, much appreciated.
Night.
thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Kind of towards
Okay,
the back, in the
so, as we said earlier, the public hearing for Blackbrook Estates was continued until our next meeting.
I see it.
We do have,
Which, just for the record, to make sure that everyone knows when that is, it should be the 20th of November.
Yep, 20th.
20th at 7:15.
Oh, I see it.
Roy, did you have an update on the Compass Way, Signature Way? Did we want to proceed with that at this point?
So as of right now, and doing much research to find the things that don't exist, and after careful recollection of how this happened maybe 14 or 15 years ago, whenever that was, when Compass came in, we did actually see a preliminary plan for a subdivision. That preliminary plan for the subdivision, I think, as I mentioned at our previous meeting, I think, or maybe it might have been the track meeting, so I apologize, these are kind of running together right now, but did show a road coming in off Route 18, which is the current Compass Building entrance, going back some 900 feet, I believe it was, then taking a 90-degree right turn and coming out on Highland Street, was the preliminary subdivision. That was never filed as a subdivision, a final subdivision plan, or and I think the reason behind that was Compass realized that they already had frontage on Route 18, and they would therefore wait to do that. So that is actually not a roadway, an approved roadway under subdivision control. It is simply a driveway to the existing Compass building, which I understand is going to have a new name on it very shortly. But given that, then I would suggest that the only thing needs to be done is that the current landowner, which is still Equity Industrial Partners, simply needs to file a letter telling us that they're changing the name of the access way to whatever they're going to change it to. I did have two telephone discussions with the current real estate manager who's in charge of that piece of property, the Equity Industrial property, between Highland Street and Route 18. And the preliminary indication is it's not going to be a healthcare company's name.
Oh.
I'm not sure what it will be, but
Okay.
The preference is to avoid potential future problem where Compass does in fact own the land and the building, as I understand it. The building is leased, as I understand the discussion I had. So to head off a possible change in the way healthcare merges together and then splits back out and things like that, they're gonna come up with a different name, but
Okay, so it's not going to be the name that was on the agenda, which was Signature Way?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
But these things are always talked about one day, and then the letter comes in the next day with something different. So all that I can say is that my thought was, based on the fact that it's technically just a driveway, that they could
name it.
call it anything they would like to call it.
Yeah.
If they can get the US Post Office to acknowledge that as their legal address, then that's fine as well. From a planning board and zoning standpoint, their legal frontage is on North Bedford Street. So there is no encumbrance, if you will, with changing a street name that's on file at the registry on a subdivision plan.
So there would appear to be no action that the board needs to take with regard to that, other than to let the office know that if there is any further inquiry, that they can advise us by letter as to, the choice that they make in terms of name. So, board will take no action, no formal action on that. Site plan approval, at the last meeting, we did distribute a revision of the current section 13 of the town bylaws, which would give a little more meat, I guess I'd say, to the procedure and to the standards for site plan approval. I don't know if anyone had any particular comments, questions. The intention would be that be approved by the board so that it would be then forwarded along for placement also in the annual town meeting for final approval.
So what is the change? I mean, what is it now, presently?
Well, I mean, if you would, just by comparison, you just have to look at section 13 in the book.
Okay.
It broadens it out, Rachel, basically. It puts, one of the couple of the things that I have been identified as problems. Number one is there's been no fee attached to this, so we're adding a $200 fee for the filing of a site plan.
Okay.
Request for approval. The other thing is that there has been, the board has, I think, somewhat to our dismay or detriment, been a little bit generous in accepting plans that were not up to the standard that we might like, and kind of relying on those with the idea that we're not trying to make it a process that costs people a lot of money, in some cases, small business people and what have you. However, I think in a couple of cases that has not gone well in terms of the result of particular projects.
Yeah, okay.
So, my own opinion. So this models off of what we have now, but it also expands it to make it a little clearer as to what we're going to accept, and that unless you comply with the requirements, you're not going to have it accepted for
Okay.
review by the board.
So just a quick clarification, if I could, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that's actually section 13 of the special permit rules and regulations.
In front of me.
Let's see, Mr. Gardner. showing just as 13 of the zoning bylaw, Roy, no?
There's also a set of rules and regulations for, Candy, can you get this, the special permit rules and regulations? It should be in its own book in the office. Yeah, there is a section in the zoning bylaw, but there's also, I was thinking about this morning when I was reading that again, that I think the thing we really need to modify is the special permit site plan rules and regulations document,
Oh, that paper.
which is the document that's promulgated under the zoning act, to be the, if you will, a multi-page document describing what you have to do when you file a site plan. We may have to change both, I'm not sure of that, but I think that there is a bunch of detail in the special permit rules and regulations for special permits and site plans.
Okay. I know that they had, the office, we were talking about that the other day, and they had separated out special permits and site plans into different applications and such, so that, you know, we now have two different documents for those purposes.
Yes.
And certainly if we need to further adjust, we can do that.
I do note, looking at the town clerk's website, though, that special permit rules and regulations does not appear to be posted there. So,
Give Candy another moment.
okay, so there's a document posted on the planning board site.
Which is the application, though? Or is it more than that?
It's called Site Plan Rules and Regulations.
Okay.
And that's a,
Three page.
how many pages is that?
I thought that that was modeled after the bylaw, but we do need to make them consistent, certainly.
Yes.
So let's do this. Let's, here comes Candy now. Let's take a look at that. We obviously have time to do that, so we'll just keep that on the agenda for the next meeting. And if there needs to be an adjustment with respect to what appears on the application and such, we can do that at the same time, so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So we'll leave that for our next meeting. Briefly, I asked that Union Street, West Union Street, be placed back on the agenda. This is kind of one of the projects that the impetus, or part of the impetus for the change, the desire to change the site plan bylaw. Last year, I believe it was, after much discussion and debate, there was a site plan approval granted to that property for purposes of the development of a used car business. It's right next to the post office.
I see.
To say that it has not quite worked out in the way that was intended, at least as far as I'm concerned, was sort of an understatement. We now at least have a single color building with a different color roof and some wood tone shingles in the front. We have some concrete that's been poured around the property. I don't know for what exact purpose, but I'm assuming for vehicle display, which is inconsistent with the site plan approval that was granted. So the only reason I put it there is to get a sense from the board whether there is concern with respect to the way that that has been handled. at this point, or whether, it's something that is okay as is. I don't know that the applicant has fully begun to utilize the site for business purposes, so perhaps there is something more intended, I don't know. But I think it's something that should be monitored for compliance, because we've had I think some differences of opinion as to what, what was intended in the way of the approval. And
I think I passed by that when we go to the post office. We see that on the
Yes.
right, yep. I've seen it being worked on. I've seen the color change and all that, but I haven't seen any vehicles there yet.
I mean, typically, when I go by it, there are 3 vehicles at least that seem to be, have been there for a while.
Way back on the property.
The site plan approval contemplated that the vehicles would be displayed at the very rear of the property,
Okay,
away from West Union Street.
okay.
It contemplated that there could be some walking paths put onto the property to facilitate, people moving around, so that you wouldn't have to walk on muddy lawns or, whatever. And we have, some wide concrete strips that have been put in there. So again, I'm not sure that we're at the point of finality with the work at this point, because it's been very slow. But, again, we can, I would just maybe ask that that be kept on the agenda for a bit, to see if there are any further changes and improvements made, and once sales have begun, to assure that it's, cars are being kept where they're supposed to be kept, and that there's not overcapacity.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Okay. Daisy Lane. Mr. Gardner, comments there? I think we,
Yeah, so
we're at the
we
point.
have what I'd call a multi-party negotiated agreement on Daisy Lane. Come up with a improved redesign of the detention basin on the east side of the property between the first and second houses in Daisy Lane. What it amounts to is cleaning out the existing detention basin, putting a backflow preventer on the outlet side of the basin where it goes into the wetlands. Changing the grading in the first house yard to some extent to better level it off. It appears that all parties that were at the on-site meeting where we sketched some things down in the new engineering information from Holmgren Associates is acceptable to environmental partners. And Alex from the Conservation Commission was there, I was there. The engineer from EP was there, as well as the engineer from Holmgren, as well as the developer was there. During our meeting, we spent probably the better part of an hour to an hour and a half going over what we can do and what we can do to improve that.
So this, just for your information, was something that came about, was an approved subdivision. The homeowner at number 3 Daisy Lane raised some concerns about the fact that the so-called detention basin was actually more of a retention basin, that water was not draining. She raised some concerns with small children and so forth that are living there. So it was found that the water seemed to be backflowing from the adjacent wetlands into the detention basin, and that's the point of trying to redesign it in certain ways to mitigate those problems. So Roy, would it be appropriate to vote to modify the approval to require the installation of the earthen berm and the flapper valve as proposed in the letter of November 3rd.
Yeah, I also move that, that we modify the basin and using the context that was presented in the letter from November 3rd from EP and the plans that were designed by J.K. Holmgren Engineering to include the Basin 3 modification at Daisy Lane.
So the motion by Mr. Gardner is to adopt the program that's laid out in the letter of November 3rd, 2023 from Environmental Partners with respect to Basin 3 Daisy Lane, to modify that basin by the installation of an earthen berm and a flapper valve to address concerns with the functioning of that basin. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
Motion is seconded by Ms. Tedesco. Further discussion?
Question.
Yes.
I live at Daisy Lane. Should I recuse myself?
I would say no. I don't think that.
So normally the way that would work is.
That's true, the subdivision matter, so we can't anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've already now publicly told us that you live on
Okay.
Daisy Lane, so I think that covers that. You're free to participate in the discussion. Since it is a subdivision, you wouldn't be able to vote on any motions associated with the subdivision anyway,
Right,
so.
right.
So I think the fact that you've, and you're not the landowner on either side of that basin. I know you're on the other side of the street, so I think we should be good. But if you do have questions, you're certainly free to ask the questions. I think just for the record and for the board's understanding, especially three of the newer members here at the board, Daisy Lane was filed at the time where, just a week before Daisy Lane subdivision was filed, our town engineer for over 2 decades retired as being our town engineer. He took a full-time job in another town and retired from his then business at that time, which created a problem for us because we had to come up with a review engineer in short notice. So we actually went out to bid for a review engineer. We got a reviewing engineer company to do the review. Between the original engineering company that did Daisy Lane and the reviewing engineer company that we hired to, and I say we hired at the expense of the developer, there was back and forth go around, at least 3 or 4 rounds of things going back and forth. It was a very painful process. One of the things that got missed, and it was pointed to us by EP when we hired EP as our full-time reviewing engineer, a little less than 2 years ago now. Maybe it's even into 3 years, but in any case, they pointed out that when they reviewed the documentation on file for Daisy Lane, there was no test pits done where the detention basins were, which is kind of a major issue, and that was missed by our initial reviewing engineer. Those test pits probably would have picked up the fact that the groundwater levels where that basin is were actually higher than the assumed groundwater levels in the design. Because what we found is the most significant part of the problem was that the water level in the wetlands was actually flowing backwards into the basin. So instead of the water flowing out of the basin into the wetlands, it was flowing from the wetlands into the basin.
Yeah, that's
Which is why this spring, especially with the significant amount of rain we had,
yeah.
the basin had water in it for a good part of the spring into the first month or so of the summertime. So since then, it seems to be okay, but one of the fixes we've come up with is what's called a flapper valve, which would be on the outboard side of the pipe, so that water can't flow backwards into the basin. So that should address part of the problem. The real problem at this point in time can't be fixed, and that is that the overall piping design within the entire subdivision is actually a little bit too low.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't really do anything about that right now. Because all of the, I don't wanna say all, but a majority of the pipes have minimum cover over them based on standard good roadway design for maintenance. If we were to try and raise the pipes, you'd have to raise the entire roadway.
Oh,
So we're
Yeah.
beyond a point, and we did approve the plan based on our prior engineers, review of the plan, so. It's something that we won't miss again. Since then, we've made sure that anytime there's detention basins, or any design that's related to where the water gets into the wetlands, that everything is above the wetlands, and that we have test pits for everything that's being put in the ground. So that's a short backstory of the painful process that got us to this point.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. Thank you.
So,
yeah.
Further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve the modification as just presented, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Record will show that's a 4-0 vote of the regular members present. The past due taxes bylaw, Roy, any update there?
So still working on that a little bit, but we have found that the current version of the bylaw as it's being implemented while we stopped giving out building permits actually worked, because let's just say a developer in town was building multiple houses and wasn't paying taxes on the lots until such time as those houses were completed, had occupancy permits, and were being sold, and then he was taking the proceeds from the sale to pay the taxes. Had all of his permits being issued stopped. My understanding is the next day he paid all of his back taxes, so.
Wow, wow.
Now, that wasn't a unique case where there was
Yeah.
a true financial problem. He simply was following a practice where,
Yeah.
once he had bought the lot, he didn't pay the taxes until everything was done, permits were issued, he built the house and had the occupancy permit, and then he was treating the taxes as part of the money that changed hands during the transaction to purchase the house.
Yeah.
So that's changed, at least for that developer. I'm working on getting some information from 3 other towns that I've been told have
Hardship.
a defined waiver process for hardship situations. Because I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't reinvent things if we can find something that's already worded fairly well. So I'm gonna attempt to follow up with that, so that hopefully by the time we come to annual town meeting, or well prior to town meeting, we'll have at least a draft copy of what we would suggest would be the correct wording. It's actually missing some wording right now anyway, because if someone wants to appeal, they're supposed to have a hearing, but there's no indication of what the hearing process would be, and exactly who they appeal to, and how the hearing, so that language is completely missing in the current bylaw, so the details of how you would do that need to be there according to the legal advice. So I'm gonna continue to follow up on that.
It's great.
That's good, yeah.
So I think we just saw also another instance where the bylaw worked as it should, where another, I don't think Roy and I are talking about the same situation, but that another developer did, who was looking for some approvals, did end up making payment, so that I think that, as matters come before this board, it'll be our policy just to make sure that, there is nothing outstanding, just by way of communication from the office to the town collector's office, treasurer's office. And, I think that part of it seems to be under control. The other piece of it, as Roy indicates, is a hardship waiver or some process that we can hopefully work into the scheme of things.
So if I could, Mr. Chairman,
You
a couple
may.
other bullet items on here I have
Go ahead.
information on. I have prepared a preliminary road bond estimate for Pierce Path, which is the small subdivision, I believe 3-lot subdivision that's off of Bridge Street.
Oh, okay.
The developer has been given a copy of that. I should note that we've been given some updated financial numbers from John Haynes in terms of what things actually cost the town as of this year. So some of the numbers that were multiplied out by the various quantities there, those dollar numbers are new numbers that have just gone in. A couple of those are how much a ton of asphalt costs. A ton of bituminous, I think, is the word we use in the road bond. Several other things are in there as well with the new numbers. What we expect is, as of this morning, I actually talked to the developer this morning. They've just finished compacting the roadway, and they were gonna have compaction tests done in the next day or two by an engineering firm that specializes in compaction testing to make sure that the road is compacted to the density it needs to be for a subdivision. That report will then go to EP. Once EP looks at that and confirms that that looks good, he's gonna pave. He is planning on paving within the next couple of weeks. That's obviously, this time of year is driven by ground temperature.
Right.
Because I believe that the current standard for paving is that the ground temperature be at least 40 degrees and rising to pave, otherwise the pavement starts to set up too fast before it can be rolled out. And given this time of year, right now, it looks like that should be okay. But we did have a couple of pretty cold mornings with some hard frost. If we have too many days in a row where it doesn't get warm, the ground won't stay above 40 degrees during the daytime, so we'll keep an eye on that, but that's where that stands right now. Until such time as it's paved, we won't be actually issuing any lot releases, and we won't be taking the bond. Standard policy, I think I've said before, but I'll repeat again for the newer members, is we don't issue lot releases until such time base coat of pavement is down. And that's based on the request from the public safety representatives in the fire department. They don't feel it's safe to be trying to get in and out of a subdivision where there's construction of houses going on and potentially houses sold when there's no paved roadway. So we require that the base coat be down. Then what happens is that typically the houses all get built. Once they're all built out and there's no heavy equipment operating in the site, they'll then go in and put down the finish coat of pavement. And at such time, then we'll start releasing road bond monies, once that's done and inspected.
Is there a map in the handouts? I didn't have
Yeah.
time. Okay, oh, there is a map, okay.
Is this it?
No, I don't believe there is.
I don't think there was a map of Pierce path
Okay,
in there.
because I
Yeah.
was wandering along, I tried to search it in Google Maps, I didn't see a Piers Path,
You're not gonna
No,
see it yet
no,
on
not
Google
yet, right.
Maps, so it's,
wouldn't be on there.
it's on the easterly side of Bridge Street,
Okay,
probably 1,000 yards, give or take a few yards from the intersection with Central Street.
okay,
Oh, okay, I've seen it.
So if you were to start down Bridge Street from Central Street, it's gonna be on the left-hand side, the east side of the street.
okay,
There's a stockade fence along one side of the roadway that's going in there. And I believe it's if you're going down Bridge Street, I believe it's the very first stockade fence you come to. The roadway is right just beyond that, that's where it's going in.
gotcha, okay.
And you can see it pretty well, the gravel's all down and compacted and so on and so forth, so.
Got it, okay.
Another item related to road bonds is they did the finished paving at Sully's Lane, which is off of West Pond Street. That was done this week. The road bond for Sully's Lane was a road bond that was originally prepared by John Delano and Associates. We only had a paper copy of that road bond. I took the time this weekend to put that into our current electronic spreadsheet that we're now using for road bonds, so it has the same amount as, it has all the items on the Sully's Lane. I haven't had a chance to send that to the office yet. I just finished it earlier today. And intended to send it in about 1 o'clock, and my phone didn't stop ringing for the rest of the day, so I realized as I walked in here tonight that I hadn't sent it yet, and it's not here. Besides, I need to take a look at Sully's Lane and make sure that everything that is done there that we can check off of the road bond is acceptable. If it's not, I would ask EP to come down and look at it. It's a very small subdivision that was in pretty good shape prior to the finished coat going down, so. Again, I'll take a look at it. If it looks like it's not acceptable, I'll have EP look at it, and at our next meeting, we'll do the road bond reduction.
Follow that to the 20th of November.
I will get the updated electronic version of the road bond as it currently sits. I'll get that into the office so it can go out to everybody.
Okay.
And the last two items, Roy, the zoning map changes and/or MBTA communities.
Yeah, I think as of right now, the majority of the zoning map changes would be the overlay district off of Thatcher Street, and then the two zoning changes for the MBTA Communities project. We did have a further discussion on those, and I'm trying to finalize at least some draft wording for the two overlay districts. We did discuss that in some detail at the track meeting this week, last week. It was the first Wednesday, so was that last week or this week?
That was last week.
Next week.
Yeah, last week
Wednesday
was the first.
Yeah, that would have been last week. So
Right.
hopefully, no later than the first meeting in December, we'll have on the table the actual proposed map. What I'm trying to do right now with the proposed map that was provided to us from Old Colony Planning Council is do a detailed summary of all of the parcels included within those two maps and come up with an exact acreage of how much acreage is there. The reason behind that is the state has suggested that we create enough land to hold 750 units, given the fact that the expectation is that this is going to be all private, commercial contracting development. It's not going to be subsidized by anyone or anything like that, so what gets built is going to be based on what the market demand is. So the likelihood that everything that gets built is going to be done at 15 units per acre is probably slim to none in East Bridgewater. But we need enough land so those overlay districts could support up to 500 units. So the suggestion is, if we increase the land area by 50%, so it could theoretically hold 750 units if they were to use the full 15 units per acre for the whole thing. That should address the fact that as it gets built out, it's certainly not going to average 15 units per acre between the actual development as the contractors build them to meet the marketplace, as well as square footage areas that get lost for any additional roadways and/or wetlands and things like that. The plan is still to have a circuit breaker built into the zoning overlays, and there's going to be two different overlays. One will be for the north section at the Whitman line, one will be for the downtown. What we're referring to right now is the downtown area. Those will have circuit breakers in them that basically say, once we've reached our goal in housing units, that overlay will be suspended until such time as we get a new number from the state as to what our number needs to be. And right now, that number is 10% of the housing units in East Bridgewater, which is just over 5,000. So the goal right now would be just over 500.
Right. I see.
Anything else there, Mr. Gardner? I know that we have a.
So can I
North
quickly
Bedford
update the board on the proposed East High Street heavy vehicle exclusion?
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw that,
yes.
yeah.
So, the proposed exclusion actually is entirely in the town of Bridgewater. But the problem with the exclusion is that the number one and number two alternate routes end up going through mostly East Bridgewater. So a good portion of the vehicle traffic, if not 90% of the vehicle traffic, it appears from from what I've seen from actually watching it, is coming out of the BRS sand and gravel operation that's down on the, call it the northeast corner of Bridgewater.
Okay.
There's a huge sand and gravel operation it's just off of 104.
104 down there by the,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So part of the problem right there is that all of the truckers, and many of them are independent truckers, and some of them are BRS truckers, but a lot of them are independent truckers, they're gonna take the shortest route and what they think is the quickest route to get where they're going. And over the last year or so, and especially recently, the number of heavy vehicles over several of the what are true residential streets in the town of Bridgewater has exceeded 5% of the total traffic. That's the now, that doesn't sound like a big number, but that is the threshold that the state allows heavy vehicle exclusions at. So they did give us a preliminary presentation, and I think the plan is that when they finalize some of that, before they actually file it with the state, they're gonna come back and talk to us.
How would that impact us? Because if they can't go that way, what will they,
Traffic on 106
on 106?
through the Joppa Grill intersection.
Oh, that's my house. Yeah.
I think most of the traffic would end up going that way.
Which is a heavy, during school hours, it's very, there's a
Very
lot of
busy
traffic.
road. It's a very busy road for a
Yeah.
couple of hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the
Oh,
afternoon.
yeah, and there's a lot of young people still walking, a lot of walkers.
So my expectation is a good percentage of that traffic would end up coming up 106 and taking a left, staying on 106, but taking a left at what we used to call the Carver Cotton Gin.
Take a left going up to the high school,
No, left at the intersection.
coming down.
Where 106
oh,
cuts
coming-
off
yeah,
of
going
Plymouth
to
Street.
Whitman, going the opposite way, okay.
Now, I don't want to even guess where they'd go if they're not going south. Because if they're going north, none of them are gonna want to go through that intersection in the center of town.
No,
So I don't want to, I'm not sure how they'd end up going, but I've got some ideas, but it's scary.
yeah,
Some of them may, if they come up 106, if they're going north, would probably go down Washington Street. Come up a short portion of 106, 'cause where they'd come out is basically where Washington Street starts anyway. It's not too far from the Washington Street 106 intersection where BRS is. If you cross Washington Street,
right, yeah,
go across 106,
yeah,
and then turn right up into Bridgewater,
Yeah.
it's kind of,
that's right.
It's kinda
in that
right
area,
there.
Yeah, so
so,
that's a tough intersection right there at 106.
yes.
That's where they've had a lot of car accidents.
Well, it's highly improved since it was redesigned, 14, 16 months ago,
Yeah,
where they've now changed the intersection of the cross streets where Washington crosses 106 into 90-degree intersections.
it is
It's
better.
far better now than it
Yeah.
was. Now there's a clear 90-degree intersection with a stop sign. The stop sign was always there, but people that weren't familiar with that intersection driving down Washington Street, I don't think realized they were just going across 106 at that point
No,
because of the angle of that intersection.
it's almost like a merge. It's interesting.
So we will get some more updates on that as they finalize the package that's going to be going into the state. And I think the last item that I'm aware of goes back up to the top. We have a
Yeah,
Form
we
A
have a
for-
Form A plan. That is for property on North Bedford Street. Basically, a request to divide existing
Oh, yeah.
Assessors 109 Lot 10 into two pieces, that being Lot 1 and Parcel A. Purpose of the request is to permit future egress to land of the town of East Bridgewater, Parcel 109-6. Roy, any comments, further comments there?
Yeah, I've been reviewing this with the engineering firm Merrill and with town council, and I insisted that the third note under the notes get added to the plan,
Purpose.
which explains exactly what's going on there. Now, part of the reason for that is to be a true Form A plan under the zoning act, parcel of land must have at a minimum the frontage that's required in that district on an existing public way. Now, this doesn't have 150 or whatever the frontage is, it's only slightly over 40 feet.
40.
So technically speaking, without that note, this wouldn't qualify as a Form A plan. With the note, it means it's providing an access as a potential future roadway into the land that the town owns, that's basically in behind the new warehouse, if you will. It's north of the new warehouse. The town has two parcels of land, one of which is 109, on whatever map number that was that Kevin just read.
1096.
Or 109 parcel 6, I'm sorry, map 109 parcel 6.
And the other thing that's noted there is that parcel A would not be considered as a buildable lot, so I think that the base is covered there.
So given that in this plan, which came back into the office with that note added relatively recently, I think it's a Form A plan that's ready to be signed. So also move that we authorize signing the Form A plan.
Motion by Mr. Gardner to endorse the Form A plan for North Bedford Street under Assessor's Map 109, Lot 10, being divided to Lot 1 and Parcel A, as shown on the plan, prepared by Merrill Engineers. A second to the motion?
I second that.
Seconded by Ms. Tedesco. Discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
To reflect, that's a unanimous vote of all regular members present and voting. And Candy, did you say there was another plan for signature?
Not the signature. On here though, 1700 Central Street.
Yeah, that's
there's
actually,
something sent in with photos.
that's actually gonna be part of the discussion, I think, on Blackbrook, right?
Okay, on Blackbrook, okay, excellent, all right.
So I think, if anybody else has anything that they wanna bring up?
Just quickly, for the benefit of the board, there was one other thing that was going on that was discussed twice at the track meeting. And that was, there's land up on Chestnut Street. I think we touched on this a little bit. They have now filed that land with Zoning Board of Appeals to address the problem where there's a house that doesn't have any access to it because the driveway is part of the abutting lot. They do have a easement, but they've now decided to split a parcel in between the two to give the house on the northerly side of the big lot a driveway, but to do that, it requires variance from the ZBA. Because while they are increasing one of the lot areas, they're making at least one number less, in less conformity with zoning, so they have actually now filed it with ZBA. The copy we have doesn't have a date stamp on it, but it says it was submitted on the 2nd, according to the signature of the owner. Has this actually gone down to the town clerk to get filed yet, do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. When was the 2nd?
Friday. Thursday.
Probably
Thursday.
not, because I don't, was Dodd in today? No, so it wouldn't have gone to it won't go to the town clerk until the secretary for the ZBA takes a look at it and verifies the application is complete, so I expect it will be going to the town clerk's office within the next day or two, because Dot Simpson is the secretary for the ZBA, and she wasn't in today, and I know she wasn't in Friday.
Tuesday, Wednesdays are her days.
Usually Tuesday, Wednesday, right? Yeah. So she'll probably be in tomorrow and take care of that. So there was some original thought that they could get a special permit from the planning board for that, but after going over it and looking through it fairly thoroughly, it was pretty clear that it had to go to ZBA first. So I think that's all I have. Kevin?
Anything else to come before the meeting this evening?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
It's a lot.
I would then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, to adjourn by Mr. Gardner, time being 8:30. Second to the motion?
Second?
Made and seconded, all in favor.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well.
Thank you.